All right, so now is the official welcome back, and you're in the right place if you're here for the 1 o'clock presentation. How to stop the Secure Act from taking up to one-third of your IRAs and retirement plans. And like this morning, we'll have a break roughly halfway through, and we do encourage your questions. They're sometimes the best part of the presentation, so we do want you to ask questions, and if the questions become too much, we'll take them at the break. And then after the break, we'll go to about 3 o'clock. And then we encourage you to stay for our final presentation regarding financial planning. And as Jim mentioned, Adam Yofan and his associate Corey are with us today, and they're going to discuss financial planning with us for a couple minutes later in the afternoon. So, anyways, on to the main presentation today. Jim's written 7 books, including Retire Secure, and the most recent one, which is Beating the New Death Tax, which has to do with the Secure Act. And Jim and our team, we've been planning for this for years. We've been having strategy meetings among our team as far as what are some of the best strategies to overcome the Secure Act. And a lot of what you're going to hear this afternoon is the lifetime part, the strategies. So we've been preparing for this, and a lot of people have been asleep at the wheel. So I think you have the benefit of having a team that's prepared as you're thinking about whether to hire us to help you. So having said that, Jim has been quoted in the Wall Street Journal 36 times and has written exclusively on this topic. And with that, please join me in welcoming Jim Lange.
It was 2 a.m. and the phone call came. A lot of you have had another phone call at 2 a.m. knowing it's an ominous call and it wasn't good. And my business was literally on fire. And I get out of bed, drive to my business, and I see the business literally in flames. Some of you have been with me that long. It was a little bit higher up on Murray Avenue than we are now. We were right above a pizza shop, and somebody did some subpar electrical work, and there was an electrical fire. This is February 8th, 1998. We still had about 700 tax returns to do. And I know we weren't going to go back in that building. The agent happened to be there. I said, "Do you have any other space?" He said, "Yeah, but I have to deal with this fire." I said, "I have to deal with tax season." So he gave me the key. I fumble in our current office, and I said, "How much rent do you want for it?" He said, "Well, same rent." And I said, "Done." That was our sophisticated negotiation. Anyway, the office was basically wiped out. The computers shot, all the software shot, all the backup or all the information on the computers. The good news was we had actually taken the appropriate steps to protect ourselves. All the data and the software was backed up till the day before the fire, and it was backed up off-site, like you're supposed to do. We were very well insured, and we got through that tax season. The point is, you don't know when bad things are going to happen, and you want to be prepared if something bad does happen so that you or your family can get through it without getting hurt. And one of the things that has happened, if you will, if not an immediate issue, is this Secure Act, which is just miserable for those of us that have IRAs and retirement plans. So we're going to talk about the Secure Act. There will be a little bit of repetition for those of you who were here this morning because we have a bunch of new people. And the other thing is the parts that we are going to be repeating are so important, it will not be a terrible thing to hear them more than once. We're going to talk about what the Secure Act is, perhaps more importantly, we're going to be talking about what you should do about it. Now, this morning, we really covered what I call the dying part. We talked about the best estate plan for married IRA owners and after the Secure Act. Now we're going to cover what I'll call the living part. And these are strategies other than wills and trusts, etc., that you can take now to defend yourself and defend your family. Then again, we'll have a 10-minute break, probably roughly an hour from now. We'll finish hopefully around 3. Sometimes we go a little long with questions. And then at about 3:15, we'll just go for about 45 minutes on investments, which I would encourage everybody to stay for. Specifically today, we're going to talk about some long-time strategies that we've used for Roth IRA conversions. We're going to talk a little bit about Social Security. We're going to talk about gifting. And we're going to talk about a combination of strategies because ultimately, when it comes down to it, I'm going to guess, everybody in the room, there isn't going to be one answer. The quote, ideal solution will be multiple answers, multiple strategies. So we're going to take a look at least one example of multiple strategies. So this is the part that I think bears repeating. And this is the classic principle that I have been shouting from the rooftops since literally the mid-'80s. Don't pay taxes now, pay taxes later. All right, don't pay taxes now, pay taxes later. In 1998, I had to change that. Don't pay taxes now, pay taxes later, except for the Roth IRA and Roth IRA conversion. And this mantra, if you will, don't pay taxes now, pay taxes later, except for the Roth IRA conversion, this applies while you are working. This applies after you are retired, and this applies after you're gone. When you're working, that's what I would call the accumulation stage. Put money into these retirement plans. After you are retired and you have, let's say you have IRA money, you have after-tax money, and you have Roth money, subject to exception, spend your after-tax dollars first, then your IRA money, then your Roth money. Pay taxes later, except for the Roth. And then I want you to pay taxes later, even after you die. So under the old law, up until December 31, 2019, if you died with an IRA and you left it to a non-spouse beneficiary, most likely a child or a grandchild, or not necessarily, it could be a niece or a friend or a partner or anybody else, that person could defer or stretch the distributions on that inherited IRA over their entire lifetime. If it was a grandchild, it might have been 60, 70, 80 years. If it was a child, it might have been 30 or 40 years. And that tax deferral, paying taxes later, was enormously beneficial. And Congress basically said to you, if you put money in your IRA or your retirement plan, we will give you favorable tax treatment during your lifetime. After you are gone, we will give favorable tax treatment to your beneficiaries. And most of the people in this room put money in their retirement plans, in their 401ks, 403bs, SEP, KEO, etc. And the deal all along was you would get favorable tax treatment, your kids would. Now, late in the game, Congress decides to change the rules. We're going to make your kids pay income taxes in 10 years after you die. Wait, that wasn't the rule. You're changing the rules late in the game. Too bad. They don't care. All right? It's a miserable, miserable law. But that's what we are stuck with. Let me tell you how miserable it is. Let's say that Joe had $1 million in his IRA, and he died with the pre-2020 law. Died up until December 31, 2019. And he died with $1 million in his IRA, and given certain reasonable assumptions, this is where this is where his child is when his child is in his 80s. That's $2 million. Okay? So let's say that he had died with the existing law as of December 31, 2019. His kid, reasonable projections, has $2 million. But instead, let's say he dies January 1. His kid, using the same assumptions, has 0. What is the difference between $2 million and 0? It's paying taxes later. With the $2 million, Joe's child is stretching or deferring the taxes on that inherited IRA. With the 0, that income tax is being accelerated. Yes, sir. No, this means there's no money left. Now, to be fair, I'm assuming that the child's spending money along the way. But no IRA left, no after-tax dollars left. Kid is broke compared to $2 million. This is pretty big. And the other thing is, these days, many of our kids, we're in a different economy than when most of us were working. For many of us, we got a job, maybe there was a pension, maybe there was a 401k, and most of us have pretty good work ethics, and we worked there 20, 30, 40 years. We built up money in our 401k, we kept doing a good job, our job survived. That's not the economy today. You work here for a while, you subcontract there. I think even if our kids are talented, they're going to have a much tougher time being as strong as you are financially when they are your age. So one of the protections that you can do for your kids is to be smart about your estate planning. And that's why many of you are here right now. And I'll tell you one of the great ironies. So I'm looking around and I see some no hairs and some some gray hairs. And most of us probably have a different work ethic than a lot of our kids, stronger work ethic. And many of your kids, even though they don't have anywhere near as much money saved up in their retirement, they have nicer and bigger kitchens than you. That doesn't seem fair because they're spenders. And by your viewpoint, they are probably overspending given the resources that they have. And you know the irony of it? They're going to get away with it because you're going to get your estate plan right, and then you're going to bail them out. And you even know that. You know that. But you're still going to do it anyway because you love them. And by the way, I'm going to try to talk you into spending more money. I'm probably going to fail. I'm going to try. The one area I've been successful is getting people to spend some money on family vacations. But anyway, this is a very real thing. And we don't want your kid to be here. We want your kid to be, well, I don't know if we can ever get as good as the old law, but we're going to try to do our best and try to reduce the damage. I think there was one more question. Okay, so we don't want your kid to be broke. We want them to have $2 million. There are the assumptions. I'm going to skip over the assumptions. But Jim, it's called the Secure Act. That doesn't look very secure to me. Well, let's talk about what the Secure Act is. I'll tell you what it really is. It's a stinking pig with a bow. That's what it really is. So what's the bow? If you're working past 70, you can still put money in an IRA. Big deal. All right, the one thing that's even a little bit useful, actually it's more than a little useful, is your minimum required distribution doesn't start until age 72 instead of April 1st of the year after you turn 70 and a half. So that's a little bit useful. Oh, well now they're going to give access to 401ks to the insurance companies so they can sell you annuities inside your 401k. Great! They're going to give you the opportunity to buy what is likely a very high fee annuity. And I don't want to get into it, and particularly being recorded, but who do you think is going to do, if the commission on that is 5 or 10%, all right, and you're paying And by the way, you don't even see it, all right? Because these guys aren't fiduciaries often, so the money just goes straight from the insurance company to the salesman who sold it. And who do you think is going to do better? Jack Bogle at Vanguard with $1 million, or an insurance company with 900,000? And I mean, by the way, the commissions on them are great. And when I found out what the commissions were for selling annuities, I had two reactions. That's outrageous. That's terrible. The consumer's getting ripped off. And the other reaction is, wonder if I can get in on this. I call it going to the dark side. I've never sold an annuity like that at all, ever. It would also be a violation of being a fiduciary advisor, which we are, which in simple terms means we are not only morally, which I believe all advisors are, but we are legally required to put your interests ahead of our own. So I don't believe in these things. Of course, the insurance companies are jumping up and down with joy because they're finally going to be able to get access to all these plans while people are working. So I just think it's miserable. Okay, we're going to talk about two strategies in particular that are not only good for your kids, but they're good for you. So that's really a nice thing. All right, so I'm going to pick on two different people. Let's pick on Larry and Karen. All right, so Larry and Karen, for this example, are 62 years old. And they both have the identical amount of money. They both have the same earnings record for Social Security. So Karen, I'm going to give you two choices. Number one, you can start taking your Social Security at 62 and make no Roth conversions. Or number two, you can wait till 70 to take your Social Security, and you can do a series of Roth IRA conversions every year between 62 and 70. Which way are you going to go?
Take contributions at, wait till 72 for Social Security and convert to the Roth.
All right, so she said wait till 72 for Social Security. Very good. She corrected herself. Sorry, I couldn't let it go. 72 is the new minimum required distribution, but 70 is still, there's no point waiting past 70 for Social Security. It doesn't go up. So she's going to say, okay, I'm going to wait till 70, and I'm going to do a series of Roth conversions. Larry's saying, I want the money now, and I'm not going to write any checks for Roth conversions. All right, let's compare Larry, who's doing nothing, with Karen, who's holding off on Social Security. She's doing a Roth conversion. Here we go, Larry versus Karen into the future. Larry, if he lives long enough, is broke. He runs out of money. Karen has this much, and if you follow that over, that's $2 million. This has nothing to do with your kids at this point. She has $2 million. He has nothing. And it's nothing to do with investments. I'm using the same investments. I'm using the same everything. The difference is we are getting the strategies right. All these advisors, oh, you should get IBM, not AT&T, or you should get this index fund, or you should do this. All that is fine, but we don't know what the market's going to do anyway. Let's get the strategy right. We're going to talk a little bit more about Roths, a lot more about Roth and Social Security later on. But here's the point. The strategies that I'm going to be recommending that are good for your kids are also good for you. This isn't certain strategies that are good for your kids but not good for you. These strategies are good for you and good for your kids. Okay? I'm going to skip over the assumptions, but anybody that wants to, we have those. Okay, so now we're going to get into Roth IRA conversions. As many of you know, I did the first Roth IRA peer review article back in 1998. I've been on top of this issue, and I thought they made a lot of sense before the new tax law. before the Secure Act. Now they make an incredible amount of sense. That is going to be a really interesting strategy. Now, actually in 2018, they changed the tax rates. So what I'm going to do up here is compare the 2017 rates to today's rates. Please notice that today's rates, if you're married, up to the first, well, the highest rate for somebody who has income of $326,000 of income is 24%. You might be thinking, well, gee, Jim, I don't make $326,000. Even maybe I'm retired, maybe my minimum required distribution, my IRA and Social Security, let's say it's $100,000. But think about this, even if it's $100,000, now you can make a Roth IRA conversion of $226,000 and still be in the 24% bracket, where before you would be in the 33% bracket. That's 9% off the top. Who here thinks that tax rates are either going to stay where they are or are going to go down in the future? All right, how many think that they're going to go up? If we are right, then the value of Roth IRA conversions, of doing tax at low rates, and then having tax-free income and a tax-free asset when the rates go back up, is going to be enormously beneficial. So anyway, as soon as they had these rates, I started doing workshops on Roth IRA conversions in early 2018. In 2019, Forbes magazine found out what I was doing, and they said, we want to feature you in a story. And we did, and I believe that reprint is in your folder, but we did a story with Forbes. I'm also a paid columnist for Forbes.com, and I followed that up with another article or two. But the point is, we are in what I believe to be a historic low for tax rates. So what have I been saying since 1998 was the best time to make a Roth conversion? When Joe was working, he had a good salary, he was up here. All right, then between his retirement, and let's say he was holding off on Social Security, and he was holding off on taking a minimum required distribution, he was living on money outside his IRA, his income went way down. All right, so let's say he retired at 66 or whatever it was, income down, income down, income down. Then what happened at 70? Now 72, minimum required distribution. And then on top of that, Social Security, if he's married, his wife's Social Security. Income is back up here. When have I been saying for the last 20 years when to do the Roth conversion? When your tax rate is low. Well, now that we're in a low tax bracket, even if he's already retired, he might be a great candidate because the tax rates are going to go up. So a whole new class of people that were not great candidates for Roth IRA conversions are now good candidates for Roth conversions. And as we saw in the prior slides, they're not just good for your kids, they're also good for you. Okay? Of course, nothing's ever easy. So I have a lot of people, they read and they're do-it-yourselfers, and they sometimes come to these workshops and then they try to work it out themselves. Certainly no engineers do that, right? And they come in like, at some point they often, at least they don't do their own wills. Some do. They come in, oh, look at all the Roth conversions I did. And I'm thinking, you did way too much. You increased your Medicare Part B. You're paying more on capital gains. You increased you lost your qualified dividends. Now you're paying more investment. Some people like to pack their own parachutes. This is not a great area. You have to be really careful. To me, the only way to do this this is my whole approach to retirement and estate planning, is to what I call run the numbers. Let's say we're doing it for Joe. Okay, Joe, status quo. We're going to take Social Security at 66, not do Roths. Let's run that forward, not just for his life, but for the next 50 years. Okay, let's going to hold off on Social Security and we'll do no Roth conversions. All right, we're going to hold off on Social Security and we're going to do a series of small conversions. Okay, we're going to hold off on Social Security, do a series of larger conversions. Okay, we're going to hold off on Social Security, do a series of larger conversions, and we're going to make some gifts. Blah, 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 blah. We call it running the numbers, and you're in the room while we do it. And ultimately, we're going to come up with a better plan. And the plan, in order to make it work, has to pass 2 tests. One is what I'll call the math test. 2, it has to pass the stomach test. Can you stand it? We have recommended $1 million plus Roth IRA conversions to people. Some people have chosen not to do that. I don't insist that you do what the numbers are the best, because he just couldn't stand writing a check for $400,000. And I don't blame him. And I said, fine, do $200,000, don't do any, whatever you like, but make an informed decision. And I think that's one of our competitive advantages, is that we have some very smart, sophisticated CPAs using the best software, and we run the numbers routinely. I'm asking you, if you're going to hold up on Social Security, that's bad in the short run. If you're going to write a check to the IRS for paying taxes on a Roth conversion, at least it feels bad in the short run, so why should you believe me? Again, peer review articles, by the way, article of the year, 3 editions of Retire Secure, all bestsellers. I was getting $10,000 a day to teach advisors this stuff. I'm still in front of gobs of attorneys. We wrote a dedicated book on Roth IRA conversions. We also did a dedicated book on Social Security. Many of you remember when I had a radio show, I had all the top IRA experts in the country. All right, they were all believers in Roth IRA conversions. There's no such thing as an IRA expert that doesn't believe in Roth conversions. It doesn't mean that everybody should do it every year. It means that it's a very good concept that should be considered as part of everybody's retirement and estate plan. Again, they were all Roth IRA advocates. Again, we did gobs of articles, 3 books, etc., etc. We've been running the numbers for years, and the numbers don't lie. And unfortunately, I have a little bit of a reputation that I don't like. And let me tell you what I think it should be. Sometimes our reputation is, oh, Lange's firm, they love Roth conversions. You go to them, they're going to try to talk you into Roth conversion. What I'd like to think is, or the reputation I would like that I think is more accurate, Lange's firm loves to run the numbers. They like to test various Roth IRA conversion and gifting possibilities, and they will present the analysis to you, and then you get to decide. But there's a very good chance that one of the recommendations is going to be a series of Roth conversions. That's the reputation that I would like and I think is accurate, but we don't necessarily control that. And this is what I would say. In God we trust, all others bring data. All right? I can't believe how many people have made huge Roth conversions, medium-sized Roth conversions, small Roth conversions, no Roth conversions, and I say, well, how did you decide how much and when? Well, and I don't get good answers. Sometimes it's based on tax bracket, which might be partly okay, or they said the advisor recommended it. Can I see the advisor's worksheets? Well, we don't have any worksheets. Well, how did you know you picked the right amount? And I don't know how to say this nicely. I don't believe that this is a matter of opinion. All right? Joe likes Mozart, I like Brahms. We could argue till kingdom come, and no one's going to prove anything. But if you follow the math, there is an ideal Roth IRA conversion. Now, of course, everybody's different, and everybody's fax pattern is different, and people have different values, so there is certainly an art to it. But a lot of it is just math, and it's not nuclear science. And our firm does the math. And it's really important for retirement planning, estate planning, and we are very lucky. We hire math people. You know, our CPAs, I was hanging out with one of the CPAs. We were flying to a workshop together, and she's there. She's not doing crossword puzzles. She's doing Sudoku. And that's who we hire. And, you know, Matt has a math degree from Northwestern. That's unheard of for an attorney to have a math degree. But how can you do this kind of work and get optimal numbers, particularly when most of the people in this room, we're sitting on an income tax time bomb. And the bomb explodes after we die, and it's going to all come out in 10 years unless we do some real planning. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of Roth IRA conversions. So what is the essence of a Roth IRA conversion? That's where Joe is taking a chunk of his IRA. By the way, it could be a 401k, 403b, SEP, KEO, etc. He's taking a chunk of that money. He's paying income taxes on it now. All right? And in return, that money will grow income tax free for the rest of his life, the rest of his wife's life, and under the new law, for 10 years after he and his wife are gone. Okay? That is the essence of a Roth IRA and Roth IRA conversion. As a bonus, this isn't the reason he's going to do it, but as a bonus, no required minimum distributions for Joe, no required minimum distributions for his wife, and again, his kids under the old law, they could stretch it for their whole lives. Under the new law, they can stretch it, or they can defer the tax on a Roth for 10 years. And by the way, there's going to be a different strategy for inheriting Roths than inheriting an IRA. So if I'm advising Joe Jr. after Joe and his wife die, I say, hey, Joe Jr., you inherited a Roth IRA. Let's just say it's $500,000. All right. I would say, since you're working, since you inherited other money, spend the other money, use your salary, et cetera, let the $500,000 continue to grow tax-free. Don't take out a nickel until year 10. Let's say it earns 7%. Now it's $1 million. Okay. Now I wouldn't recommend that with a traditional IRA, because if he does that, when he takes it out on year 10, he's going to be in a huge tax bracket. It might be better off to take a little bit each year, or it might be better to take it when he has an off year for income. Sir.
Is there income tax on after-tax money that you give to an heir?
The question is there income tax on after-tax money that you give to an heir? There isn't income tax at the time that you give it, or even at the time that you leave it. But if you leave them an IRA or a Roth IRA, no, there's no income tax. And again, if they're doing what I'm going to recommend, they're going to hold it for 10 years, take it out. That whole distribution is tax-free. So again, $500,000 grows to $1 million. They take it out, $1 million, no tax. But now they have a plain old brokerage account for $1 million. They invest that. So now it's year 11. Okay, they earn interest, dividends, capital gains. Now they have to start paying tax after the 10 years are up. That's right. That's one of the great advantages of a Roth. Okay, yes, sir.
But for the state of Pennsylvania, when do they pay their tax or their transfer tax or whatever?
All right. Well, we have to distinguish between transfer tax and income tax. So transfer tax, typically at death, for Pennsylvania, it's 0 to leave to a spouse, 4.5% to leave to a lineal heir. And you have to pay at death. Or when the money goes to the lineal heir, it's even more, by the way, if it's a non-lineal heir. Okay? I'm not so worried about, first of all, unless you spend it all, you're going to end up paying Pennsylvania, and you die a PA resident, you're going to end up paying the 4.5% Pennsylvania inheritance tax. And I'm not a big believer in giving away everything to die broke so you can get into a nursing home for free. All right. But I'll tell you what I am worried about and what you can do a lot with, which is income tax. That is the key. And so many of these estate attorneys don't get it. They're still living 20 years ago when the exclusion was 600,000 and we were worried about a federal transfer tax. You know, now the exclusion is 22 million something. I'm not worried about transfer tax. I'm not even worried so much about the 4.5% PA. What I am worried about is the 40% income tax on your IRA.
But to continue that guy's question, it was for a Roth IRA that's transferred at death to a child. He owes the state tax at that time or when he withdraws the money?
No, he owes the tax within 9 months of death. And the question is, does the estate pay the tax? You can draft either way. You can have the estate pay the tax. You can have the beneficiary pay the tax. And I don't want to get into that one. Okay?
But he pays it at the time that the Roth IRA is given to, that he inherits it.
Yeah, he pays it. The tax is due within 9 months of death, and we usually like to pay it within 3 months because we get a discount.
And then the earnings after that are not taxable.
And the earnings for the first 10 years are not taxable in the inherited Roth.
Tax due at the time of conversion, would the tax be paid from a non-IRA account?
All right, so the question is, again, since I'm an attorney, I can take any question and let's either rephrase it. What I try to do is try to add more value to the answer. What it really comes, the way I'm going to interpret that question is, are you better off paying the tax on the conversion for money inside the IRA or outside? And the answer is outside. So let me tell you a bad candidate for a Roth conversion. Joe has $2 million in an IRA, zero money outside the IRA. So if he wanted to do a Roth conversion, he'd have to go into the IRA. You work out the math on that, it's not so wonderful. All right. If he has money outside the IRA and he uses that money to pay the tax, that's much better. If he is a real tiger, all right, he takes a home equity loan, uses that money to pay the tax on a Roth conversion, and there's a lot of people who go, that's an interesting idea. But the problem is he'd have to sleep alone for the rest of his life because his wife would kill him. She said, finally, we paid off the stinking mortgage, and now we're going back into debt so you can do a Roth conversion. Actually, it's an interesting strategy. I talk about it more than we actually do it. By the way, that's an example of something that passes the math test, but it doesn't pass the stomach test. Yes, sir. More interesting with the lower mortgage rate, and the answer is yes, it is. Sure it is. Wait, hang on. I haven't even done the basics on the Roth. Let me do the basics, and then if you have questions afterwards, let's do that. All right, now, for the basics for the Roth, I'm going to ask you to remember, in God we trust, all others bring data. All right? Let's define our terms. All right? Money, purchasing power. What's the difference? Joe has $1 million in his IRA. Bob has $900,000 outside his IRA. Traditional value of money, whoever has the most wins, Joe wins. I don't care about the most money. I care about the most purchasing power. Joe hasn't paid income tax on that money. Measured in purchasing power, if he cashes in his $1 million IRA and he has to write a check for $400,000, he only has $600,000 left. If Bob cashes in his $900,000, and let's forget about capital gains for a minute, he doesn't have a tax. So Joe with his $1 million in his IRA, Bob with his $900,000 outside the IRA, they both see a boat. And the boat cost $600,000. And included with the purchase of the boat is 1 year free docking. All right? So Joe says, okay, I want the boat. I'm going to cash in my IRA, pay my $400,000. I have $600,000 left. And now he has a boat and free docking for a year. So he's sitting there on his boat where he gets to sit for a year, but he doesn't have any more money. Okay? Bob has $900,000, less than Joe, but he doesn't have a tax. So he pays $600,000 for the boat. He has $300,000 left. I think I'm going to buy some fishing equipment. I think I'm going to buy some food. I think I'm going to buy some alcohol. I'm going to invite my buddies and we're going to have a party on the boat. Okay, buddies, come on over. We're going to go fishing. We're going to drink some alcohol. We're going to have some beer. We're going to have some wine. We're going to have some whiskey. And we're going to go out fishing. We're going to have a great time. We have a lot of gas for the boat. Well, Joe has no gas. He has no fishing equipment. He has no food. He has no alcohol. So he's just sitting there in his boat, and everybody's waving, "Hi, Joe, hi, Joe." And they're going to visit Bob. The point is, we're worried about purchasing power. All right? Can everybody accept we want more purchasing power more than more total dollars? Is that a reasonable definition? Okay. Since I picked on you, Joe, do you want to be Mr. Status Quo or do you want to be Mr. Roth? Mr. Roth. All right. So Joe has $100,000 in a plain old traditional IRA. Okay? He also has $25,000 outside the IRA. So measured in total dollars, he has $125,000. Actually, let's make it $24,000. How much purchasing power does he really have? Well, if he has to pay 24% when he cashes in his IRA, and let's assume that pushes him into the 24% bracket, he has the $24,000 to pay the tax from outside the IRA, so he writes a check. So even though he has $124,000, measured in purchasing power, he has $100,000. Can everybody accept that? All right, now Bob also has $100,000 in an IRA, and he also has $24,000 outside the IRA. So he has the same purchasing power as Joe. But Joe decides, okay, I'm going to make a Roth IRA conversion. So he takes this $100,000, he fills out the appropriate paperwork, and now he's going to have to pay income tax on it for the Roth conversion. So he has to subtract the income tax. He pays it with this. How much does he have left in purchasing power? $100,000. That's the same as if he did nothing. Does everybody get this? Because, by the way, very few people do. We call it the secret. Very few people get this. You know, some CPAs get this. Attorneys are clueless. By the way, you have to explain this 3 times to the attorneys. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. Measured in purchasing power, you break even with a Roth IRA conversion on day 1. That's what most of the people don't get. Even these financial writers who should know better. There's all kinds of articles and even calculators on the internet that I believe are worse than nothing because they measure in total dollars. If you measure in total dollars, you get a different conclusion. The conclusion that you get if you measure in total dollars is Roth IRA conversions are not good for older people. They're only good for younger people because you need many, many years to make up for the fact that you're paying the taxes. But if you measure in purchasing power, it is a tie on day 1. Now I'm assuming a flat income tax rate, but do you see that? Now, did it matter, for example, if Joe was 20 years old, 40 years old, 60 years old, 80? It doesn't matter, right? So, if we do this, what would be the difference between, let's say, Joe and Bob? One of them does a Roth IRA conversion. Let's even say they do it every year for 5 years versus the status quo. So we're going to have Joe, let's call him Mr. Roth, and Bob, Mr. Status Quo. Joe's doing a series of Roth conversions. Bob isn't. Identical assumptions on everything else. So let's see where they are over time. Again, nobody's dead. They're just doing it themselves. And here we go. For 8 years, we have this big of a difference, which is, oh, I don't have the number there. Wait, it is, it's about 1.3 million, there it is. It's 1.1 million better off at 85. If he makes it to 95, he's about $2 million better off. This isn't for your kids. This is for you. Now, again, everybody's facts are different, but there is enormous opportunity for Roth IRA conversions. And again, my premise is I don't want to guess. I want to run the numbers. I want to test no Roth, small Roth, bigger Roth, and then some of the combinations. But if we can, just by doing a series of Roth conversions, be $1 million, $2 million better off, that's really interesting to me. And then we're going to talk about the next generation later, but really interesting strategy. Yes, sir.
When would no Roth conversions ever be better?
When would no Roth conversions ever be better? One example is when you don't have the money to pay the tax, and you don't want to do a home equity loan, or maybe you don't have a home. Another one would be if you're leaving all your money to charity. Charity doesn't care what kind of money you're getting, so they would just end up with less. Why pay taxes if you're going to leave the money to charity? Another one is if it doesn't pass the stomach test. It's great, Jim. It pains me too much to write a check for X to the IRS, even if that's the ideal amount. And I get it. And by the way, it's our job. We're the advisor. We make recommendations. We show you like the result of running the numbers. And by the way, it's not 70 pages of gobbledygook. It's like a 3 or 4 page report. We looked at 14 variations. We eliminated all but 3. Here's the advantage of number 1, number 2, number 3. Here's the backup. And you guys get to choose. Now, the truth is we often know what we want to do, but ultimately it's your choice. Yes?
I was just going to say another reason could be if you do the Roth conversion and then the tax law changes it in some way that makes it.
Okay, I want to address this. Them rascals in Washington, they promised us we would never pay tax on our Social Security. They promised us, and now we're paying tax on Social Security. But at least it didn't hurt us because we didn't do anything about it. What if we pay the tax on the Roth and they change the law and say, well, too bad you have to pay tax on the Roth distribution? Then you're not only not better off, but you're worse off. Which is a very legitimate objection to the Roth IRA conversion. Let me address that. With Social Security, it was never the law that this money would never be taxable. You can't find that in the Internal Revenue Code. Where you could find it, the legal word for it is dicta. What is dicta? Dicta means non-legally enforceable words spoken by a judge, a legislator, a politician that does not have the force of law. With Roth IRA conversions, if you look in the Internal Revenue Code, it will say you can never pay tax on this Roth IRA. If they tried to change that, that would really be outrageous. That would be a violation of due process, a violation of the Constitution. You would have a very well-funded revolution. So I think in terms of potential changes of the tax law, I think the odds of an tax increase are greater. All right, now let me tell you theoretically one way you could get hurt. They eliminate the income tax. Steve Forbes comes, ripping back into politics. He's pretty old right now. Good guy, by the way. I met him, and he actually wrote good writing on my article, which was nice of him. I wasn't even sure if he read it, but he does. He's still pretty sharp. But anyway, he wins the presidency and he eliminates the income tax. I don't think so. Are we ever going to have a sales tax, a national sales tax? Maybe, but that'll be in addition to. I don't know, what is there, $7 trillion in the IRA system? You think Congress with all the needs that we have is going to say, well, we decided you don't have to pay tax on all that. No, no. So I think any changes are going to help people who made Roths.
Real quick, just related to the question, and this might be one that you and Adam have some thoughts on. With the market where it is right now, even if the recommendation makes sense to do a conversion of a certain amount, what if the market goes down 20% after you do the conversion? As far as like a reason maybe that it might not seem good in the short term.
Since Matt works with me, I'm allowed to make fun of him, which I wouldn't do if it was just a client. Oh, okay, so then you know when the market's going to go down, and you're sure that we're at an all-time high. And by the way, they do ring a bell at the top and the bottom. Now, I'm being a little bit sarcastic. I will say this. In the old days, if you did a Roth conversion and the market went down, you could undo it. It was called recharacterization, and we were much more liberal. I mean, it's actually a good question. We were much more liberal with Roth conversions because if we, and by the way, in 2008 and 9, we did a lot of recharacterizations. We even did one strategy where we, let's say Joe, hardly anybody had this much guts. Joe has $1 million in his IRA. So we would break it into 5 IRAs of $200,000 each and invest them completely differently. Then we converted everything, even though the right amount might have been $200,000. Then we waited till October of the following year, and then we recharacterized all but one of them. That was really pretty aggressive. But no, you're right, we can't do that. But that is one of the risks. This is what I would really say. I don't know when the market's going to go up or down, but my guess is the odds are almost overwhelming that for everybody or most of the people in this room, you nor your spouse will ever spend your Roth IRA, which means that we have a long time horizon. So even if it does go down, it's likely to go back up. And interestingly, that has a big impact on how we're going to invest that money. We're going to invest that money for the long run because most of you are never going to use it. That's going to be your legacy bucket. We'll talk more about buckets. Okay, so you're $1 million better off. Let's compare Joe's kids with Bob's kids. Let's say that they make it into their 80s. All right, this is, what is that about? They're better off by well over $1 million. Okay, it's a great thing for them. Okay, but one of the beauties of this strategy is it's also good for Joe. I'm going to skip all the expenses. By the way, some people said, okay, Jim, if it's so wonderful, what did you do? All right, well, I told you the story of my business on fire. By the way, I didn't tell you another lesson for the business on fire. Don't ever, ever put your business above a pizza shop. Stupid, stupid. So what happened that year? My income was up here before the fire. I didn't get reimbursed for the insurance company till the following year. My income was way down here. And then what happened the following year? Then I got reimbursed and it was back up here. I always said, do the conversion while it's lowest. So at the time we were in our 40s, and I told my wife, and she's a sharp cookie, she has a master's in electrical engineering from Carnegie Mellon. She's very quantitative and she hates paying taxes. I said, I think that we ought to make a Roth IRA conversion of all our IRAs and all our retirement plans, which at the time was a little shy of $240,000. She said, what? Are you nuts? Blah, blah, blah. But again, data driven. All right, we didn't have any of the fancy software we have today. So we just did it on Excel. And I showed her and she said, okay, let's do it. We did it. Our family will be millions of dollars better off because we did that. And there's a very good chance that my wife nor I will ever spend that money and it will go to our daughter or potentially even grandchild. We are just so much better off. And yes, I was much younger than many of you are now, but the point is I did it with my own money, and if I'm wrong, I'm going down with the ship. I don't think that's going to happen. Let me tell you another problem that I had. So let's put another zero on this. So let's call it 1,240,000. All right. So this was the problem that I had in 2010 when they eliminated the income tax on a Roth conversion. I was in front of all these financial advisors, and let's say that they were charging 1% to manage the money, and they were managing $1,250,000 or $1,240,000. And I said, well, I think that you ought to take a look at doing $1 million conversion, maybe over a series of years, and paying this $240,000 in taxes. They said, yeah, but if I do that, then my fee goes from $12,400 to $10,000. Why would I want to do that? Because it's the right thing for the client. Oh, but I'm going to make less money. Well, we're fiduciary advisors, aren't we? But I'm going to make less money. The message didn't go over that well. Now, I would hope that the reason many advisors don't recommend Roth IRA conversions is not because they understand it and they're being greedy. I would hope that they genuinely don't understand it. But I don't really know. But you should know it is against the self-interest of the advisor for you to do a Roth conversion, because that's less money for them to manage. It's against the self-interest of the advisor to hold if you hold off on your Social Security, because if you holding off on Social Security, that means you need to spend more to meet your expenses, meaning that you're going to have less money to manage. It's really critical to go to a fiduciary advisor. And by the way, one thing that you always want to know is how much is the advisor making? You know, when I tell people, well, how much are you paying in fees? It should be easy. X dollars, X percent, whatever. Oh, gee, I don't know. There's this complicated formula. Well, you know, if I buy this, no. You should know. Okay, it's going to be 1%. Given the amount of money you have, it's going to be 60 basis points, whatever it is. You should know what you're getting, how much you're paying. That's really important. Now, the other advantage, let's say status quo. All right, Joe dies without a Roth. The gentleman was worried about PA inheritance tax. He has to pay, his kids have to pay tax on $1,240,000. The day before he dies, he does the Roth conversion. Now his estate is only $1 million. So he saved 4.5% times the 240,000. Okay, not all that big for Pennsylvania, but if you get into federal estate tax, which is unlikely for most of the people here, but we think it's going to come back at a much lower level than 22 million, so it very could be a problem. The other thing is, if you do the Roth, that Roth is most likely creditor protected, where if you don't do the Roth, the 240,000 is not creditor protected. There's some interesting, let's call it elder law ideas, combining elder law and Roth IRA conversions. Okay, so my big thing is use the window of opportunity when tax rates are low. All right. Again, before, I like to do it when their tax rates were low because you were retired, you didn't have minimum required distribution, you were holding off on Social Security. Now, let's assume Joe is past all that. He's taking his minimum required distribution. He's taking his Social Security. Well, maybe now he's a much better candidate for a Roth conversion, particularly with the low tax rates, than he might have been if the rates were higher and you didn't have the Secure Act. Okay? The right answer, run the numbers, and then update it every year. That's the right number. That's the right answer. Okay. All right, so now I'll take last questions on Roth before we get to Social Security. Yes, sir. No, I'm not going to get into politics. But
So the assumption you used was a 24% current income tax rate, which is good for this year. But let's say there was a different group in DC starting in 21. How long is the 24% rate good for 2020 and 21, or can that change in 21? So I'm trying to understand what the window is if you truly believe that there may be some change in one.
All right, so the question is to some well, there's two parts to the question or two parts that I'll answer. One, when is the tax rate supposed to go back? And I believe it's 2025. What's really going to happen, I don't know. But this is what I do know: tax rates are low now. We have an opportunity now. So that's the best thing the only way I can answer it.
You have to pay tax on the RMD. If you don't have outside money to pay the tax on a conversion, can you use the RMD as a conversion? You're gonna pay the tax anyway, and now you've got what is left after the 10% reduction or whatever.
Yeah, I got it.
As a
Yeah, you see what this guy's doing? He has what I call larceny of the heart. He's wanting to squeeze the last drop. He's saying, hey, I'm over 70. I have to take a minimum, or now 72. I have to take a required minimum distribution anyway. How about if what I have left over, we just call it a Roth, right? That'd be great, but you're not allowed to do that. If you want to do a Roth conversion and you're already taking a required minimum distribution, you have to pay tax on the required minimum distribution and on the Roth conversion. Okay, which may or may not, it still might very well be a good strategy. Okay. Well, right. The comment is you can use the tax because your RMD is 50,000. You pay 15,000 tax. You have $35,000 left. Let's say you're not using that to spend for your normal purposes. Bob's comment is, well, you can use that to pay the tax, but now your income's going to go even higher because you have RMD and Roth, which, by the way, very well might be the right strategy. Okay, I'll take one more Roth and then we're going to move on. Okay, no more Roths. We're going to move on. Social Security. Okay. Who wants to take Social Security at 62 or early? Well, smart group. Pam, we're going to have you be the loser because you look so young. All right, so Pam says, I don't want to hold off on Social Security. I want to take my Social Security at 62 because who knows what's going to happen. I don't trust those rascals in Washington. I want to make sure to get my money. All right, and she has the identical amount of money as Karen. And Karen says, no, I'm going to hold off until I'm 70. So Pam's getting income immediately. But to compare apples to apples, we can't have her spend it, so we're going to save it. All right? I'm going to give her a 4% rate of return, which I think is pretty good if you're looking at guaranteed investments. All right? So here it is, Pam versus Karen. One holds off on Social Security, one takes it at 62. And what we get, all right, so here, Pam's holding off. Then she's getting, to oversimplify, 8% raises every year. So she's getting a lot more money. And here's where she'll be over time. On the other hand, if you take it early, you start accumulating money immediately, but not as much. And there's a crossover point, age 82. Okay? So I've been using a chart similar to this for a long time. And back when I had the radio show, I was going over this chart with a guy named Larry Kotlikoff, who wrote probably the best-selling Social Security book of all time. For a small period, my book was ahead of him, but not long. But Larry's a really bright cookie. And we're going over this idea on the radio show, and this is live. Didn't even call me Jim. Lange, you have it all wrong. Oh, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have used 4%. I should have used 2%. But if I had done that, that would have even been an earlier break even. Said, no, that's not the problem. I said, well, I checked the math like 32 different times. He says, the problem isn't the math. He said, quit thinking like an actuary. Start thinking like an economist. All right? If Pam or I'm sorry, if Karen is holding off on Social Security and she dies before the break-even point of 82, she's dead. Dead people don't have financial problems. And he's right. Your fear should not be dying early. The legitimate fear is that you live a long time and you run out of money. And if you hold off, this difference is $214,000. It's not inconsequential. All right? Oh, but Pam says, you know something? Here's my problem. We have a bad family history, and I have this health problem, and I have that problem. But my husband's healthy as a horse. He's going to go on forever. I was the one that did all the work. He has a lousy record. In fact, I just got back from the doctor, and he said to handle my affairs. I'm still going to have her hold off. Why? Because I want the spousal benefit for her husband. Because the survivor of a married couple gets the higher of the two. This is a critical issue. It's also a woman's issue. Jane Bryan Quinn thinks one of the reasons that we have such a high poverty rate for single women in the U.S. is because the woman listened to their foolish husband who wanted to take Social Security at 62 so he could go out and play golf or do whatever he was going to do. And then he dies, and then his wife is stuck with 50% of a Social Security benefit instead of double that. And by the way, for most of the people in this room, I'm going to take the liberty of guessing that having an extra $214,000 is a good thing, but it's not going to be the difference between you having food, shelter, gas in the car. All right? But think about your favorite waitress, the person who cuts the lawn. A lot of these folks don't know any better. They're taking it early, and they end up with a lot less. I wrote a book on it. I will give anybody as many copies as they like. And very frankly, the type of business I do, I'm probably not interested in working with that group. I'd love to help them. I'd love to give them the book. I've had people ask for 50 or 100 books, and I'm delighted to give them to them. I give it sometimes to the Uber driver. All right? And I said, here, this is $200,000. And for some of them, this is enormously important. And the spousal benefit's really important. And here's the other interesting thing about the spousal benefit. I'm not going to go too much into Social Security, but there is a living spousal benefit, which is roughly half. So let's say that Joe was the traditional worker. He has a big earnings record. His wife stayed home, raised the kids. She doesn't have much of an earning record. She can get to oversimplify, half of what he was entitled to at 66. And at his death, she gets his whole amount. But see, Joe looks like kind of a straight shooter type guy, salt of the earth type. Let me tell you the truth. He's a rascal. When he was 20 years old, he married this woman, made her life miserable. She hung in there for 10 years, couldn't stand it, got out. Divorced her, married somebody else. He did it again at 40. He did it again at 50. He did it again at 60. He did it again at 70. So, and all these women, they were all miserable. None of them remarried. All right? But he has a great record for Social Security. All of them are entitled to a spousal benefit. And when he dies, let's say his benefit's $40,000 a year. They all get $40,000 a year. Now, is this a great country or what? I'm kidding a little bit, but one time, they changed the rules on Social Security. I won't get into it. But right before they changed the rules and there was a transition period, there was something in the law called apply and suspend, which is no longer there, and for married couples. And I was running around giving workshops on apply and suspend. Hurry up, do apply and suspend while you're still allowed. And I given this workshop, and this woman, she didn't raise her hand or anything. She said, finally, the no good SOB, but she didn't use the abbreviation, is good for something, because she realized that she could collect her husband's Social Security. I should say her ex-husband's Social Security. So get Social Security right. The other advantage, if you hold off on your Social Security, your income is lower, so you can make more of a Roth conversion at a lower rate. So it's a synergistic calculation, which works out really well. Okay, any questions on that before I move on? Yes.
I'm pretty comfortable that you're going to answer it this way, but I guess I just want you to say, for simple example, a couple, well, you know, they have good careers, they retire at 65, they defer their Social Security until they're 70. So let's just say that 5-year period, they're, you know, foregoing $50,000 of Social Security each of those years, $250,000. That would still be generally recommended, and they spend that $250,000 that they're not out of their IRAs at that time frame.
All right, so there's about 6 questions in that example. I'll try to take them one at a time. Number one, does it always make sense for both spouses to hold off on Social Security till 70? No. It might make sense, particularly in the old days, to do apply and suspend, and it depends on when your birthdays are. It might make sense for one spouse to take Social Security and the other one to hold off. Second is, well, if they're holding off on Social Security but they need to live, is it still better off if they have to use the money from their IRA to pay their expenses than hold off on Social Security? Well, it's certainly worse than if they have money outside the IRA, but does it still make sense to hold off? Again, the answer is going to be, when are they going to die? But if you work out the numbers, this is the best longevity insurance you can buy. You could go to an insurance company and buy longevity insurance. Joe can say, hey, I'm okay, you know, between 65 and 85, but I'm worried about what happens at 85. He can go to an insurance company and say, I'm going to give you $100,000 now. And for the next 20 years, you don't pay me a nickel. And if I die before age 85, I lose my 100. But if I make it to 85, you have to pay me $100,000 a year for the rest of my life. It's called longevity insurance. All right? Might be a reasonable idea, but the internal cost and rate of return that the insurance company is going to give you is much, much worse than the Social Security Department will give you. So the only time I'm really recommending holding off for both people tends to be when both people have a significantly reduced lifestyle. Now, let me tell you another unpleasant conversation that I've had. Well, gee, Jim, I'm 62 years old. I don't have that much money, and I have to take my Social Security. And that's a very unpleasant conversation. And I'll tell you what I want to say, and sometimes I do, depending on what they do and what their work capacity is. You can't afford to retire. Okay? And I don't like that, and that person usually isn't a good candidate for services. But usually when somebody comes in, even if they're not a good candidate for services, I usually like to give them some value. So anyway, the right answer, by the way, again, is running numbers. Okay? Test it. And again, the Social Security is going to be just one portion of a multi-prong, what I'll call master plan. Okay, so the next issue that we're going to get into might be the biggest game changer for you and your family. You know, we talked about Roth conversions, and I love Roth conversions, but the next one might be much more significant. And we're not talking about $100,000 or even $200,000 or even $500,000 better off. We're talking about your family being millions of dollars better off. And even if you didn't come here with this idea, the potential benefits of what I'm going to talk about could be more valuable than anything I've discussed. and the answer to what could be so great that I hadn't really thought of it that much, where I can be much better off, and the woman already had it, will be revealed after the break. I will remind you that we're going to offer free initial consultations with me. We already have a lot of signups from the morning. We're going to have a lot more at the end. If you have your calendars with you, you might want to visit Alice and Sue at the break. I will take questions during the break. We're running a little bit over, but we'll hopefully finish not too much after 3 o'clock. Okay, if we could get started. What is this strategy that could potentially save your family millions of dollars? We're talking about gifting. I've been working with folks roughly your generation for 35 years. I tend to attract pretty smart people. The other thing that's interesting about the type of people that I usually end up with as clients is that you live longer than most people. And by the way, that's true. So we were trying to figure out our estate administration needs in the long run. My daughter's a math kid. So I said, okay, here's the birth dates of all the people that we've done wills with. How many deaths are we going to have per year? Which is an actuarial solvable problem. We don't know who's going to die, but we can guess how many. Well, she came up with a number that was way above the number of people who are actually dying. How could that be? Our clients live longer. They really do. Oh, it's because they're so happy, they're so relaxed, there's no stress. No. People that tend to be smart about their money also tend to be smart about their health. And they live longer. The fact that they have money helps. One person said better insurance. Yeah, that's true. But I think it's people who are smart about their health or smart about their money are usually smart about their health too. But anyway, one of the things that many of you are not good at as a group is spending. You guys spending. As a group, you guys, with all due respect, are not great spenders. All right? Now, you're better than your parents, and your kids are great spenders. They have nicer kitchens than you do, but at least a lot of them, a lot of you guys are not great spenders. All right? And when we do projections, we often have you dying with a lot of money. Let me tell you a bad plan. Let's say Pam has a lot of money and she's not spending that much and she has kids and let's say she gets the investments right. Let's say she gets the Roth IRA conversions right. But she isn't spending a lot, she isn't gifting a lot, she isn't taking her kids on vacation. And then she dies, most likely when her kids are in their 60s. So their kids get A, clobbered with taxes, and B, didn't really enjoy the family money until they were much older. Wouldn't it make sense, even forgetting the numbers, wouldn't it make sense if there's more money than you need, and it's very clear there's more money than you need, to give some of that money to your kids? Oh, I see a couple. You hear that, dear? Because we have, and by the way, this is a differentiator by sex. Usually it is the woman who's more interested in providing for their kids when their kids are younger. All right? But it really does make sense for a lot of people. Now, before I get into the variety of types of gifts, I'm usually relatively unsuccessful in getting you guys to spend more money. I'll try, most likely will fail. But I don't say, oh, go out and get a new car, go out and get a bigger house, go out. No, you know what I'll tell you? Go out and buy experiences. I actually learned this not from a financial guy. I learned this from my father-in-law. Every year since I've been married, and it's been 26 years now, almost 27, he has sponsored a family vacation. He flies in, well, we drive because we're in Pittsburgh and it's in the Poconos, but he rents out a bunch of rooms in the Poconos. The whole family goes. He's 96 years old. This has been going on for at least 26 years since I've met my wife, and it's probably well before that. Every year we go to the Poconos and we hang out with the family. He has one rule. We eat meals together. Other than that, you go do whatever you want. So now we're great grandkids, and now the kids are in their 50s and 60s. All right, and even a little bit older. It is a phenomenal experience. My daughter is 25 years old. She has no other relatives in Western Pennsylvania. Well, let's just say that any kind of close relationship with anybody in Western Pennsylvania with any of her family. But she feels like she is part of a family, part of a clan. They hang out on Facebook together. They communicate with each other. She is part of a family. What is the value of that experience of 4 days a year, every year, hanging out with her family, doing fun stuff in the Poconos? They call it a beach. It's really a lake. But they hang out at the beach, and now she's playing with, her not just nieces and nephews, but grandnieces and nephews. And it is a phenomenal experience. And when he dies, and he's 96 years old, he will leave a little less money. But boy, just think of the experience that he's leaving. So anyway, that is a lesson from my father-in-law. Buy experiences, preferably with family and friends. All right, now let's talk about other types of gifts. One, plain old unrestricted gifts, and I'm talking about the kids and grandkids. Here's some money. Go do what you want. Number two, a gift with a recommendation. Here's some money, put it in your 401k. Here's some money, put it in a Roth IRA. Here's some money, use it as a down payment for a house. Here's some money, pay a lawyer to get a prenuptial. Oops, I just got... Whatever it is, can't be a requirement, but it's a suggestion. Another gift that I love is 529 plans. Okay? And one of the strategies, you take some money from your IRA, you pay tax on it, and then you put it in something that's going to grow tax-free. What's going to grow tax-free? Your child's Roth IRA, your grandchild's 529 plan. That's really like a Roth conversion, isn't it? You're paying tax, you're taking what's left, you're buying a tax-free investment. That's true of a Roth IRA for your kid or grandkid. That's true of a 529, most likely for a grandkid. You know what else is true on? Is life insurance. You're taking some IRA money, let's just say 1% of the IRA money, paying tax on it, taking what's left, using that as a premium for life insurance, and then the euphemism is when the policy matures, in other words, after you're gone, or I'm a cheapskate, second to die, then your kids get money outside the estate, no PA inheritance tax, no federal estate tax, no income tax. So let's say you end up paying $200,000 in premiums and the death benefit is $1 million. Who pays tax on that $800,000? Nobody. The life insurance company has a fantastic lobby, and it is a huge tax benefit. Now, in the old days, 2 months ago, the insurance companies used to run these models, and they said, well, here's if you do life insurance, and here's if you don't. And the models that they ran, to me were not intellectually honest. Why? Because they measured the money at the second death after husband and wife died. And I said, yeah, but you're assuming that the kid is going to cash in the IRA. The smart thing is for the kid or even the grandkid to stretch the IRA. So I don't like your assumptions. So I was still somewhat of a fan because it still worked, but it didn't work anywhere near as well as they had indicated. But now, with your kid having to pay tax on the whole amount in 10 years, life insurance becomes much more interesting. Okay? So, education, 529 plans, I love that. Life insurance, the new assumptions are closer to what they used to tell you, which makes it much more favorable. So, Joe, do you want to do some life insurance or the heck with life insurance? Life insurance. Okay, so let's take a look. If Joe does life insurance, his kid ends up here. Let's say Bob, with the identical resources, doesn't do life insurance. His kid ends up here. This is a $2 million difference. All right, Joe's taking some money out of his IRA, paying tax on it, using that money to buy a life insurance policy. Joe's doing nothing. His kids end up with $2 million. Joe's end up with 0. Now, by the way, don't overdo it, because life insurance should only be one form of a gift. I don't want your premium to be so high that you can't afford to help your kids out as needed. I don't want your premium to be so high that you can't afford to spend money on your grandkids' education. But it is a very interesting strategy that now takes on an enormous benefit to the family, and I think it is one of the major defenses against the Secure Act.
And this just occurred to me. I agree that generally speaking, second die life insurance is going to be the best value. But if there's a thought that there's a possibility of a disclaimer of the IRA by the surviving spouse, maybe having a small first life policy to help cover some of the income tax on the disclaimed amount, may be of value to the kids to get them some money now rather than later also.
All right, so Matt's, whose brain never stops, and I'm like that too. He's saying, hey, what I'm talking about here is a second to die policy. Why did I introduce a second to die policy? I'm a cheapskate. What kind of policies do I tend to like? I tend to like the lowest premium, the highest death benefit. How do you get that? You get a policy that doesn't pay until you're both gone. All right, and you tend to do smaller premiums, which means that the policy's never paid up. But there are examples, and Matt just gave one, where it might make sense to do a life insurance policy on the first to die. Disclaim, have some money to pay the tax. Again, everyone is going to be in a different situation. I am working with an insurance guy, and he likes first to die, meaning just the first death. Ed Slott, who's kind of like the IRA guru, he likes first to die. I tend to be a cheapskate. The other problem that I have with first to die is if we're going to do a Roth conversion, the income tax bracket of the surviving spouse is likely going to be higher because the income is going to be the same, but they're going to be in a single tax bracket instead of married filing jointly. So will it work a bunch of times? Yes. But the other thing is it has to pass the stomach test. You might be much more comfortable with a $15,000 policy than a $30,000 policy or a $25,000 policy or a 10-pay or whatever it is. My approach to that, run the numbers, have you in the room, you're presented the alternatives, and you get to decide. Yes, sir.
In the last to die policy, if the last to die commits suicide, the payout is 0.
And the question is, what about the suicide clause? I don't know about that. So I'm just not going to respond. Don't commit suicide. It's not a good thing. Okay. Okay. So I talked a little bit about this the first session in the morning, but for those of you who were not here, and it can't hurt to hear this again. think about the big picture. Let's say you leave $1 million of an IRA to your kid, and your kid has to come up with roughly $400,000 in tax in the first 10 years. Kid has $600,000 left, okay? Can do whatever he wants with that money. Example number 2, if you remember, one of the exceptions to the Secure Act are charities and charitable trusts. Example number 2, you leave the money to a charitable trust. What's the term of the trust? The kid gets the income for the rest of his life using a special definition of income which is actually higher than normal income. When the child dies, whatever's left goes to charity. Now think of it simplistically. Which one would you rather have? Your kid have $600,000 outright or $1 million, the income on $1 million? Where are you better off? Well, you have to run the numbers. So we ran the numbers. If your child dies early and got income for a short period, and then everything goes to the charity, the family will be a lot worse off. If the kid lives into his 90s, he'll be millions of dollars better off. So when's the quote break-even period? Well, using these assumptions, somewhere around age 64. But think about this for a second. You can do a charitable trust, and if your kid makes it to 64, he is no worse off. If he makes it to 70, he is, the difference between 2.7 and 2, he's $700,000 better off. If he makes it to 90 or even longer, he's way better off. Because it's better to have the income on the full amount than the outright amount on a smaller amount. Also, this can be a good replacement for other types of trusts that you might have wanted anyway. The spendthrift trust. Your kid's a spendthrift. Well, this accomplishes 2 birds with 1 stone. You protect the child from himself, you protect the child from his creditors, you provide for charity, and you save taxes. Pretty good deal. This also is a great answer as a replacement for the I don't want my no good son-in-law to inherit 1 red cent of my money trust. Your child gets the income. If they ever get divorced, he doesn't get a nickel. Your kid gets income for the rest of their life. You might prefer getting income for your child the rest of their life rather than a big chunk. All right. The other thing, if we're going to look at the very, very big picture, many of you are philanthropic. You want to bring philanthropy into the home. One of the things that you can do is say, son, daughter, this is how it's going to work. You're going to get income for the rest of your life. And I'm going to let you pick the charity. All right? Well, I know my daughter would start researching these charities. Well, gee, what's the expense ratio? What's the administration? What do they do? Clean water, dogs, university, education, whatever it is. And she might say, oh, this looks terrific. I should maybe think about supporting this charity before I die. So you're getting your child involved in philanthropy early in a very natural way. So I think that this is going to be much more popular than it has ever been in the past. Is it because a charitable trust is so much better than it was a year ago? No. It's because the alternative of dying and getting whacked with a huge tax on your IRA is so bad. So this becomes a really interesting option. Here are the assumptions. I'm going to skip over that. By the way, in addition to your kid being $700,000 or $1 million or $2 million or whatever else, the charity's getting $1.2 million. The big loser there is the IRS. Now, well, the charity's getting $1.2 million. When your child dies, in this example, there's $1.2 million left. and that goes to the charity. You know, whether it has to be a legitimate charity, you know, 501c3, education, blah, blah, blah. Yes, ma'am. No, you,
Okay, your assumption, does it take into consideration the time value of money?
the question
Looks
is,
like $1 million 30, 40 years from now may not worth that much.
that's a good point. It's $700,000. This is in the few. Oh wait, are we included inflation? Yeah, no, I have a 3.5 inflation rate in there. Okay. So charitable trusts become a real interesting strategy. Now, by the way, I'm not going to do this with a small amount of money. You have to take into consideration drafting it is, well, it's easy for me because I just say Matt. But Matt can do these charitable trusts very well. But the real expense is the maintenance of the charitable trust after you and your spouse are gone. You need a trustee. The money has to be invested. You have to do a tax return. You have to do a K-1. All right. So if you have $200,000 or $300,000, the administration is too high a percentage. Or if you have $1 million and you have 5 kids, same thing. Yes, sir.
But if you walk in just about any university in the country, they've got an institutional investment office. They're all ready to sign you up, take your money and administer it after you die and start paying it out to your beneficiaries until they die.
All right, so the comment is virtually every major charity will have charitable trusts or charitable annuities. Most of them, by the way, are a different idea than this. Most of them are you get income for the rest of your life, and at your death, it goes to charity. That's good if you are genuinely charitable. Okay? You really care about the charity. By the way, we can draft that, but if we draft it, we can do it where you end up with a lot more money. They use certain assumptions of how much money they're going to give you, which is nowhere near what you're allowed to receive. Now, the advantage is you don't have to pay anybody to set it up because they're happy to use their model. And I'm not saying that's a bad way to go if you're genuinely charitable, but I'm kind of going on the assumption that, yeah, there might be some charity in your heart, but you really care more about your kids than the charity. That's the way I am. I want a certain amount for the charity, but I want to protect my daughter. Brady.
Okay, so you have a comparison of taking $1 million out of an IRA and paying the tax versus putting the $1 million into a charitable trust.
Correct.
And then your child can draw the income until they die. Do you have a comparison of taking the $1 million from the traditional IRA, converting it all to a Roth, and then comparing that to the charitable trust version?
All right, so the question is, are you better off doing a Roth IRA conversion, or are you better off dying with a big IRA? Here's the problem as Brady presented it. He's talking about $1 million conversion, let's say in 1 year. Boom, there's going to be a horrendous tax that you have to pay. Will that end up being a good thing? Maybe, maybe not. If you pointed a gun to my head and said, Jim, you don't get to run numbers, what do you think the best solution is my guess would be a combination of things. Usually we're talking about people that have more than $1 million for a charitable trust, and often the right answer after running the numbers is do a series of partial Roth IRA conversions, leave the Roths to the kids, leave the traditional to the charitable trust. So there is no one size fits all. And by the way, that will forever be a problem in my practice because I can't get enough razor sharp CPAs who can run these projections well. And there's a whole bunch of my clients here who have run these numbers and have benefited from these strategies. And again, everybody is a snowflake. For our assets under management folks, we do this, In the first year, it's a really big deal because it's a lifetime master plan. Then we update it every year. The money manager manages the money. They do it for the same fee that they would charge if I wasn't involved at all. And then we split the fee 50-50. We think it's a win-win-win. We do the strategy. The money manager, by the way, one of whom is here, Adam Yofan. He manages the money. He's wonderful at that. He has his own value proposition that is well worth more than the money that you pay him just by himself. And the real winner is you, because you get the strategies and you get the money management. But in answer to your question, it would depend on each situation. Okay? Okay, here's some assumptions. Now, what do I really do in practice? I like to combine strategies. So Brady brought up a position, gee, are you better off with the Roth or are you better off with the charitable trusts? And I said, well, maybe a little bit of both, depending on the amounts. Well, what are a classic peas and carrots combination? Roth IRA conversions and gifts. What is the best leverage gift? Life insurance. So this time I'm going to ask Bob. Bob, you want to do Roth conversions and life insurance, or do you want to do nothing? I'll tell you his problem. He just wants to do the Roth conversions. He doesn't want to do the life insurance. Okay. And by the way, his kids will be hundreds of thousands of dollars better off if he just does Roth. But let's say that Joe says, no, I'm all in. Let's take a look at Roth IRA conversions and life insurance. And by the way, now in this case, I happen to know both of them, but let's assume that neither of them are huge spenders. All right, so it will have zero impact on their lifestyle. So let's compare, well, I don't have the numbers for just one, or I actually already did that. Joe does life insurance and Roth, Bob does nothing. So here it is, Bob versus Joe, life, and then they again, Joe has life insurance and Roth, Bob does neither, they die, they leave money to their kids. So now we're going to compare Joe Jr. versus Bob Jr. Bob Jr., when he is 85 years old, given certain reasonable assumptions, has zero. Joe Jr. has $7 million. This is enormous. Dying with a big IRA, with no Roth, no gift, no insurance, you're just basically saying, tax me, tax me. All right? Now, if you can't afford it, fine, don't do it. Or let's say you don't like life insurance, do education, do Roth. Here's some money, kids, go out and blow it. Whatever it is. But if you said, hey, I want the biggest bang for my buck, you're going to have a hard time beating the combination of life insurance and Roth IRA conversions. And maybe you say, well, gee, I don't want $1 million, but I want 500,000, or depending on the numbers. But you have enormous leverage, and it's almost as if the life insurance lobby helped promote this law. No, that could never happen. And by the way, I was much less of a fan of life insurance 2 months ago than I am now. And we have a whole bunch of clients in the room, and you'll they can attest, hey, it's pretty good now, but boy, after the law comes in, it's going to really make a lot of sense. Okay, whole bunch of assumptions that I'm not going to go through. Any questions before we wrap up? Yes, sir. Am I talking about term life insurance, not whole? I'm actually talking about neither. Term insurance is great for young people who need it because they need an income replacement. Particularly when I was young, but even now, if I died tomorrow, I'm still making good money. My family needs that money. I have term insurance. All right. On the other hand, I'm very interested in providing for my daughter, even if I live into my 80s or 90s. My wife and I have significant insurance. We have both first to die and second to die. So I believe in that. The types of policies that I'm talking about, they are not whole life. I'm too cheap for whole life. Whole life tends to be high premiums. By the way, higher commissions too. I'm talking about low premiums, high death benefit. In order to get that, we're most likely looking at a second to die, like a universal life, that is guaranteed, but the problem is it's never paid up. All right, until both of you are gone. Well, sometimes they say you don't have to pay after 100, but so it's really neither. All right, term insurance is really important when you're young. Most of the people here probably don't need term insurance. Okay? All right, so why don't we do a quick wrap up of what we have learned. We talked about the Secure Act being a significant threat to your legacy, and your legacy literally being, to a large extent, wiped out. We talked about Roth IRA conversions that were both good for you and good for your children and grandchildren. We talked a little bit about Social Security, and we talked about gifting and a variety of gifts, and we talked about sometimes combining different strategies. And for many of you who have known me for a long time, by the way, we keep in touch with our clients very frequently. We send out hard copy newsletters every month. We send out articles. We send out books. We send out invitations to workshops. How many here are clients? All right, so you can see we're, we keep in touch. All right, and many of you will remember that I used to have a radio show, and I would try to get the best and smartest guests that I could. And we would have, I would read their books, develop some questions, send it to them ahead of time, would have a relatively intelligent conversation for an hour. And that went on for 5 years until KQV went out off the air. And one of the guests that I had who agreed to be on the show was Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard. And after he agreed to be on the show, I thought, the guy's in Malvern, PA. That's near Philadelphia. I ought to get my you-know-what out to Malvern, do the show in person, shake the guy's hand, get a picture of me shaking his hand. He's in his mid-80s, not going to be around forever, and I'll always have it. Anyway, I don't know how it happened, but the Vanguard studio volunteered to videotape the radio show. All right. Now, at this point, I was a 5-year radio show veteran. This is my first video radio show. So I prepared questions, like I always do. I read a couple of his books, prepared questions, sent it to him. He was happy to talk about anything except for Vanguard. Didn't want to talk about Vanguard. I get it, because he's the parent. The child isn't taking care of it the way he envisioned. So I get it. But anyway, and then what I would typically do at the end of the show is I would say, okay, we talked about a bunch of things. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to tell our audience? All right? So anyway, you will see that he is far more articulate than I, but here is that conversation. Is there any, let's say, words of wisdom, although you just said so for the index funds, but anything that if we want to, for our listeners or readers or audience to take away, can you give them, let's say, the short version of Bogle investing, or is the 10 simple rules the best way to do it?
We'll use those rules, but they come down to some very simple things. Keep costs down. Allocate your assets with respect to the amount of risk you're willing to assume, with some focus on your age. Not overbearingly, but some. If you have an advisor, get a little help for some of the complexities of this system. A financial advisor is a very valuable piece of work for the things that we don't much think about, helping you with that asset allocation idea, telling you the difference between a Roth IRA and a regular IRA, telling you in your financial position whether you might own municipal bonds as compared to corporate bonds. The system is loaded with nuances. estate planning is a whole other complexity. So with this complex world, I think most people need some kind of help.
Can you imagine how happy I was?
Hearing the guy who's supposed to be the cheapest, lowest cost guy there is, saying a financial advisor, in his own words, is a very valuable piece of work. I was pretty happy to hear that. So there's a zillion things we didn't discuss. This morning we talked more about the estate planning. We didn't talk about safe withdrawal rates. We didn't talk about how much to gift. We didn't talk about investments. We didn't talk about asset location. We didn't talk about diversified index funds. A zillion things we did not talk about. I tried to cover as much of what I promised and as much relevant information as I could. So I'm trying to put myself in your position. You heard hopefully some very good information, very relevant information. And the question is, well, okay, what now? If I am in your chair, I'm thinking, gee, I want to talk to the guy that wrote the book. I want to talk to him about my situation. Yeah, he said Roths were good for a lot of people, but not everybody. He said Social Security this. He said this estate plan. But I have a special situation. And I made the decision, and it's going to cost me in terms of time, that the consultation that we're going to offer is going to be with me. All right, that's my most precious commodity is time. In the past, I've sometimes said, if you want legal, talk to Matt. If you want to run numbers, talk to the number crunchers. But I decided one of the issues is sometimes you might want to talk about something that isn't your best opportunity. Pam comes in and says, hey, I really want to talk about Roth conversions. And I say, well, Pam, that's not your big issue. Your big issue is your will. I looked at your will and, oh, man. One of the advantages of having a multidisciplinary approach like I do, CPA, attorney, and financial advisor, is I'm going to look at all of those. So one of the things I'm going to do is I am going to, let's see, shoot, I'm out of order. All right, so why don't I do it in order? So when should you really get your affairs in order? 20 years ago, right? When's the second best time? Well, it's now. All right. Let me tell you what this is in the famous words of Jim Rohn, who's now no longer with us, but a great, let's call it philosopher, if you will, which is, don't let your learning lead to knowledge or you'll become a fool. Let your learning lead to action. And what I am hoping that you will do, whether it's with me or somebody else, is take action on this, preferably getting some help. I think, particularly since I am offering this at no cost, no pressure, confidential, I don't see a downside of doing it. It is very personal. I've been doing most of the talking today. When you come in, I will be doing most of the listening. Again, I'm looking for legal, I'm looking for strategy, I'm looking for investments. And I will tell you, well, I like your investments, I don't like your legal. I like your legal, but I don't like your strategy. I like your investments, but I don't like, and I will be very straightforward. I am a fiduciary. I must put your interest ahead of my own. We are such a busy business company. I do not need to manufacture work. You can see, and by the way, we turned away 25 people. You can get a breath of how busy I'm going to be. I don't even have time, nor do I want to do work unless I can provide enormous value for you. It's really difficult for me to imagine that I'm not going to come up with at least 2 ideas that's going to save you and your family a ton of money. All right? It's almost inconceivable. If you ask anybody who raised their hands, they will tell you during that consultation, I don't hold back. All right, I'm very open. And if we are good candidates to do business, great. If not, you got some good information. So I've done thousands of these over my career. You might say, well, gee, if so wonderful, how come your business isn't growing like crazy? Well, it is. We're growing at over $50 million a year, which, other firms sometimes are growing at $5 million a year. And we keep expanding. We just got new space and we hired new CPAs, and we're still fantastically busy. Two of my CPAs cornered me last year and they said, you have to stop marketing. It's not even tax season. Steve and Cheryl, it's not tax season. We're working weekends. We're working evenings. We can't keep up. So I stopped marketing. But that was last year. This is this year. And I like to help people. It's fun. It's fun. It really is. I'm not saying money's not important, but it is fun. I've never had anybody say or even imply, including people who've flown in from all over the country, no, this wasn't worth coming in. Okay? Best time to plant a tree, 20 years ago. Second best time now. So what happens? We will send you a questionnaire, and you don't have to write your name 32 different times. It's very relevant information that helps me. I do ask you to bring in your tax return. I ask you to bring in your investment statements. I ask you to bring in your wills and your trust. Why? Because all that stuff talks to me. I can learn a lot very quickly by looking at your tax return, by looking at your investments, by looking at your wills. And that way the meeting will be all that much more valuable. What else do I ask you to bring? I ask you to bring your spouse. If you are married, I want your spouse there. Oh, gee, Jim, I'm the financial guy in the family. My spouse will go along with anything I say. No, no, no. It is very important for your spouse to be there. Even if you're the financial guy, your spouse might have more, let's call it emotional intelligence. The other thing is that your spouse needs to be comfortable with the advisor. Okay? If your spouse isn't comfortable with me or my firm or Adam, who's going to manage the money, that's not a good thing. You know, us men, we die well before our spouses, and it is very possible that you are choosing an advisor not just for you, but for your spouse. Your spouse should be there. This is a family issue. It's really important for both to be there. The other thing that we will do is, let's talk about preparation for the meeting. Hey, gee, Jim, I just spent, practically a day with you. Isn't that enough? The answer is yes. Some people want more. So we have a whole bunch of goodies for you. First, we have books, Beating the Death, Roth IRA conversion. I think you already have Retire Secure, but we will give you that. Then I think you have the Social Security book. Then we have the DVD, Who Controls from the Grave. We have a dedicated book and DVD on Roth conversions. We have an investment DVD. We have an older workshop. In the future, we will send you the one that we are videotaping now. And there's a couple radio shows. We will have recommended reading, recommended viewing, recommended listening. We have some other goodies, some articles, a bunch of stuff. Perhaps most interestingly, if you decide to watch some of these DVDs with your spouse, what do you do when you go to a movie? You have some popcorn in a bag. Anyway, a lot of people get value from this. We send this to you before you even come in. So anybody that signs up for a consultation, I forgot to mention that this morning, this box will come in the mail. All right. Again, you can do nothing. You can do a little bit. You can do a lot. It's up to you. We always start with the proposition you provide value first. All right. So anyway, your preparation is optional, but if you like, you do that. All right. So promises to you. I will not promise or guarantee investments. A, it's not ethical. B, it's not legal. C, I can't because I don't know. What can I promise? I can promise that and I'll even speak for my firm, we really care. We are true fiduciaries. I think we do excellent work. I'm so proud of the people. I talk to my buddies who are going to some of the, particularly out of state, and they're going to these big shot lawyers, and they're getting it all bollocksed up. And it's potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars difference. We have really smart people. We've run the numbers and we know what we're doing in the IRA and the retirement plan community. We will work hard on your behalf, and we always put your interests ahead of our own. I'm only looking for people who we can really help. All right. If Pam comes in and her will is perfectly fine, I'll tell her that. If her investments are fine, I'll tell her that. If her strategy is fine, I will tell her that. The odds of that being happening are probably not great, but I will tell her with all due respect, I'll do that. The other possibility is that she wants something different than I do. Gee, Jim, the most important thing is that we never lose a nickel to the nursing home. Well, I'm not saying that that's not important. I'll just say that we don't practice that kind of law. So I would refer to somebody else. Or, gee, Jim, I like annuities. I want guaranteed annuities. I can't in good conscience sell you an annuity. Well, there, I'm not even going to refer you to anybody. But anyway, I'm only looking for a right fit. And I'm also looking for people who I can help. And I'm not looking for lots of grief and aggravation. All right, if you've had 5 advisors in the last 4 years, that doesn't sound so wonderful for me. We're going to do so much work in the early years. If I can't keep you for at least a couple years, preferably 10 or more, we're not going to do well. Last time we checked, we had a 97% retainage rate, meaning people come in, the ones that sign up, they stay with us. And again, whether it's will, whether it's what we call running the numbers, whether it is assets under management. For assets under management, again, the model is we do the strategy. We have a number of financial firms. The one we are using most recently is with Adam, who is going to do a little part of our talk coming up. If your status quo is fine, great. If it's not okay, I'll tell you, well, this is what I don't like, and this is how much it would cost for whatever service it might be. Again, it could be assets under management, it could be running the numbers, it could be legal, or it can be some combination. So if you do want to go ahead and schedule that consultation with me, if you have not already done so, could you take a yellow form that is in your packet? Thank you. Does everybody have one of these in their packet? If you already filled it out, you're done. But if the way you officially say, yes, Jim, I want a consultation, is you take this out, you put a little X in this box, and Alice is going to collect these. This is also your raffle ticket for a dinner for 2. Fill this out anyway, whether you want the consultation or not. I look at every single one of them. I've done, many of you have seen this or some variation of this workshop for years, and Larry will attest this is much different than the one I did 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 8 years ago, and I hate to say it, but 25 years ago also. But I look at each one of these, and it is important to me. Tell me what you're interested, what you liked, what you didn't like, etc. Again, this will be your raffle ticket, if you will. I'll give everybody a couple minutes to fill this out. If you have not, hand it to Alice. Then we'll do the raffle, and then if you want, you can see Alice or Sue. We're a little bit late. Why don't we take roughly a 10-minute break? We'll reconvene at 3:25, and then we'll talk about investments and really some of the most important thing. You've been a great audience. Thank you so much. This will conclude this afternoon session. Thank you very much.